And looking at the long list of social problems that we have in the country, we begin to see almost an insurmountable task. But we're motivated. We're motivated to begin to work on repair. And we have people working on repair of all these things. But what we need is to get a real divine idea. What we need is a real divine vision. We need to have God to enlarge our vision, to give us that transcendent spirit which will look across all these problems and see their commonalities, to see the common problem that is festering and permitting and causing all this unrest and all these difficulties, and understand what it's going to take to repair these things and to bring people together about a common solution to a much needed problem. And we begin to look at that, we're going to have to see that through the eyes of God. We're going to have to see that through a vantage point that is beyond what we really see in most people today. People begin to work on great ideas about how to repair the disadvantages and the types of mistreatments and honestly they're planned ways of doing people out of their proper place in the United States as full citizens. We see all this that people begin to work on, and they say, well, it's an insurmountable problem to begin to be able to repair this, and it's going to take a huge gargantuan effort and a lot of preparation and all of this. And so they begin to say, well, we're going to get all these study groups together and we're going to begin to work on this problem. But then as they begin to really look into it, they see just how vast the task is going to be. And so then they say, well, how are we going to get all the disparate groups to agree on a solution which will solve the problem in a way that will cause everybody in the country not only to agree on that solution, but to actually benefit from that solution. And this is something which, some people will say this is going to cost a tremendous amount of money to repair because it's been going on a long time and gigantic damage has been done to classes of people and races of people and various groups in the country. A lot of damage has been done, and it's going to take a lot of money. And then other people will say, well, the money that is being proposed is not nearly enough to make up for the damage that has been done. And then you have a disagreement about that. And you have a disagreement as to how much damage was done. And we have a disagreement on whether or not the damage is really among the people living today, or whether the damage was only done to people who have already gone on, and how much of that damage carries on into the psyche and into the disadvantage of, well, first of all, that it carries, how much of it has carried on into the dominant society. As far as continuing those practices of disenfranchising certain groups which they feel like, won't add to their particular belief system, say, just for an example of one thing. And so you have to ask yourself, how are we going to get those people to stop carrying on this damaging ideology, this damaging belief about people of other races, creeds, and colors? All of the ideals that some people have of every degree of superiority or inferiority. Who is inferior, who is superior, and every degree in between. And whether or not there is anybody that's superior or not superior. And actually, there's not. Actually, everyone is equal. Everyone has a soul. And this is one of the things in our divine idea and our divine vision that's going to have to occur is we're going to have to see that every human being has a divine soul that is just as loved by God as any other human being. And actually, all the souls are actually already in cooperation in God's eyes. They're already one and the same. They already have the same mind. They already have the same needs. They already have the same desire to have a better future. They all have the desire for their children and their grandchildren to be raised in a better world, to have better opportunity. And so we look at that and we say, how are we going to bridge all of these great differences? And how are we going to get people to realize that it is to the benefit of everyone involved to solve these problems? These problems, ever how gigantic they are, have to be solved. They have to be solved, or they get worse as every year that goes by. And then we leave it to our children and grandchildren to solve the problems, which it would really actually be the duty of the current generation to solve. And so it's something that requires, as you can see already, when you really consider all these ideas I'm bringing out and these truths, which you realize are correct. When you see all that, you realize how necessary it is to gain a real and true divine idea, a real and true divine vision, a gigantic vision. We got to get a gigantic vision, and we are capable. But God has made us capable of enlarging our soul and our mind to gain a gigantic vision, much greater than we've ever thought we could. If we will go to God and ask for His power to be involved in our solutions and in our decisions as leaders, God will give us an enlarged vision of what can take place. So first of all, we got to get the vision of what can take place. All of the wonderful things that can take place and how wonderful the result will be. Just how wonderful will the result be? And get a vision of that. And then get a vision of all the different answers and solutions which we know God can provide. And then we get together and begin to work out those things as God gives each of us more and more ideas that we can bring together, bring to the table, and we work together on a gigantic vision. And we see it as a gigantic vision. We see it as a necessity of it being a gigantic vision. We see it as something which God intends to enlarge every one of us in our mind, heart, and soul. To enlarge our heart, to give us more love, to give us more joy, to give us a greater miracles in our own life. He sees it as a way to make us healthier and stronger and more energetic. God sees these difficulties and these problems we have to solve as something that enlarges our mind, enlarges our capacity, enlarges our soul to solve other problems that may come down the road. And so it's a great exercise in seeking God and getting a vision and using that vision to enlarge ourselves as human beings, make ourselves better, enlarge our vision of those persons of another race, creed, color, belief system than we are. And we need to enlarge our vision of other human beings that may not believe exactly like we do. They may not look in some ways like we do, which is really a rather stupid thing because they look a whole lot more. Every race of human being looks a whole lot more like each other than they do like anything else, So we just need to look for the commonalities in human beings and see that every human being really is alike. That we're all alike. These minor differences shouldn't keep us. Now that's got to come under a greater imagination. We've been too low in our imagination. We've let our vision drop too low where we look and we see, oh, there's a difference, in this other person in some minor form. And so, man, I mean, I'm suspicious of that. I'm fearful of that. I just don't know, what would happen if I actually got to know that person, because they they believe different, or they look different, or they act different, or they whatever it is, even though it's our fault for seeing it as that way rather than seeing the ways which we are similar. It's just as easy to see the ways that we're similar as to see the ways that we're different. But anyway, that great vision that we've got to get in order to repair these difficulties, in order to come up with the idea. And it'll surprise us how wonderful that idea will take place in our minds and hearts, and how easy it is going to be compared to what we thought it was going to be. So we need to really begin to just say, my Lord, why don't I just begin to grow a little bit and enlarge my vision and see what I can learn? Why don't I just find out what all God will tell me about how to solve these problems? Maybe they're easier than I think they are. Maybe it'll be easier than I think it will be. Rather than just going round and round like a mouse in a maze, maybe try cutting a hole in the box and looking out. The cheese may be right on the outside. The solution's right there outside that box. We're in a small box because we've been brought up under superstitions and false beliefs. See, this is all part of creating that social order, which now has come to a place where it has come back to haunt the people who originally created it. And it's come to a place where now it's got to be repaired, or else it's going to just get worse and worse. And it's going to be a greater problem to deal with more and more in the future. And so now that we're at that point where we see that is a failed system, of teaching people false beliefs in order to get them not to get along with one another, because we don't want the certain classes of certain types of people or classes of people. We feel like they should not be included in our social order because, as I said before, in those superficial differences that we are suspicious of, that we've been taught to be superstitious of. So let us try to get a vision that will transcend any sense of superstition or suspicion or mystery or lack of understanding, and begin to get into a vision which will say, what would God have me to do in order to show his love and his power and his ability to prosper everybody? What would that vision look like? Instead of the vision that we've had so often in the past where, well, let's take care of our own and don't worry about those others. They'll let them take care of themselves. But let's look unto everybody in the country and get a vision of how taking care of every citizen in the country is going to make this a better country for all of us. It's going to add to our power of creativity, our power of invention, inventiveness, our power to compete with other nations. It's going to make us it's going to make our armed services better. It's going to make our manufacture, our corporations better. It's going to make our job situation better. It's going to make everything better. Everything is going to be more prosperous when each and every individual in the country has an input into how the society is going to operate. A society that leaves out a good proportion of its people in the decision-making process, or in the process of being able to have their own vision of the American dream, or be able to have input, or be able to use their creativity to the same extent as the others, it's going to not grow and be as prosperous as one that allows everybody to have input. So I'm going to pray that this happens in the name of our blessed Lord Jesus Christ, that he will Give us the vision that we need. Amen and amen.